The main theme of Clair Obscur is that everybody deals with despair differently, and how each character moves on or doesn't is interesting to take a look at, because it can reflect how we, in the real world, as individuals process and manage our own traumas. Are you the type of person to shut down and get depressed when something terrible happens, or are you just like me, where we bury ourselves in work to get through tough times? Every major character in this story carries grief differently. Some will drown in it, some will fight it, others will try to erase it completely. And I think that's what makes this game so real, so quietly devastating. We have decades of empirical studies exploring how we all process grief and trauma, and in Expedition 33, I could see the whole spectrum of that research come to life on the canvas. So in this video, I want to walk through each of the characters and break down how they deal with grief, what their specific behaviors show, why they do what they do, how it affects the people around them. In fact, by the end of this video, feel free to share which character best resonates with you in terms of how you deal with real-life issues. Are you an Esquie? Are you a Loon? What do you do when you're faced with trauma? Do you escape? Do you cling? Do you bottle that ish up until it explodes in destructive ways? By the way, there will be spoilers in this video, but I have a near 7-hour story explained video that you may watch first if you wish. If you like this content, grab your paintbrush and love tap the like button. But if you prefer to throw a rock at the dislike button, do so, because all engagement is engagement, and welcome to the psychology of
Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Gustave. How does he handle grief? Well, he does so by turning it into purpose. When we first meet him, he's already chosen his path. The 33rd expedition isn't just a mission, it's his way of fighting back against the gommage, against the painters. He wants to end the ritual that keeps stealing lives year after year. Because once a year, the painters will put up a new number, each one lower than the last, and whomever is that age will be erased from existence. For him, it isn't only about surviving it himself. I mean, it is, but it isn't just that. It's about choosing to leave behind a world by building a future someone else can live in. That belief for those who come after is what keeps him steady. He's willing to carve a path ahead, even if it means he won't be there himself to walk it anymore. This is essentially the core of who he is as a character, as a person. But that belief gets tested right away, because during the opening of the game, he watches somebody that he loves, Sophie, get taken away by the gommage. Her death, despite knowing it was coming and coming soon, is sudden, brutal, irreversible, and Gustave is completely powerless. However, he doesn't necessarily break apart, even if we see crying and everything about him just tightens up. And so what do I mean by that? I mean that he does cry and he does drop down, but he doesn't stop moving forward because of his loss. Sophie being erased marks him. However, instead of completely falling apart, he throws himself deeper into the mission. He carries Sophie's memory forward to honor her and make sure that her death isn't for nothing. But man, if my wife was just erased, I don't know how I would go on. I love my wife, and this scene was so hard-hitting. But that is what defines his grief, and it shows how he copes. Motion, duty, meaning. Psychologists call this mean-making. The process of surviving grief by folding it into a larger purpose. For Gustave, that purpose is giving somebody else a future, even if it costs him his own. But this is where he does a full 180. Crazy. When the expedition lands, the plan goes out the window. Painted Renoir massacres nearly everyone. Gustave survives somehow. I'm still curious about how he ended up in a different area, safe and sound, but the aftermath is pure devastation. The bodies of his allies around him. Maelle is missing, but Gustave initially thinks she's dead. And somewhere along that walk through the blood and silence, his inner strength gives out. He tries to end his life. That moment, right there, strips away the myth of his composure because his seemingly ironclad will was revealed to be brittle and cracking. Almost in the same way that you look up to your older brother or father, thinking that they're invincible, but discovering that they're only human too. Beneath the armor and position that they hold in the family, you will only ever find another man. Gustave always seemed like the kind of person who could endure anything, but his purpose was tied to people. Without them, the weight becomes too much. Sophie, Maelle, the expedition, when it all disappears, so too does the structure that was holding him together. He lost his purpose. And he's given up. He's sick of feeling. Even after Loon pulls up and tells him that he has a responsibility to keep trudging on, we see that Gustave is still severely damaged by the trauma. At camp before finding Maelle, she asks him if he still believes in the purpose of the mission. When one falls, we continue. But all he can do is admit to hoping that he still does believe in it.
We have a mission!
Oh, fuck the mission! Fuck the mission, Lunay! What are we gonna do, huh? Tell me. What are we gonna do? We're gonna take down the paintress, just the three of us? My gun and your sparks?
I didn't take you for a coward.
I'm not a coward.
You swore the oath. When one falls, we continue.
Yes, I know.
When one falls. When one falls. Not if, when. We knew not all of us would make it, but we continue. As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over.
But I'm not afraid to fight, it's just Maelle,
Maelle swore the same oath!
I know that!
She chose her life. You and I... Come on, we always said the future of Lumiere is more important than
any individual life, yes.
Do you still believe that? Do you still believe that? Do you?
I hope I do.
And that sort of ties into the big part of his collapsed core, Maelle. She represented the future of Lumiere in his eyes, but in a lot of ways, she was also a daughter/little sister figure for him. He wanted to keep her safe. And so when he believed that she died on the beach, he blamed himself. And even after learning that she wasn't gone, he was still shaky, because that's the kind of psychological damage that grief had inflicted upon him. Now, recovery happens, but slowly. And when he finds Maelle alive, something inside of him steadies. In a way, he's reminded of his purpose and reason again. He made a promise to fight for the legacy and future of Lumiere. Later in the story, he dies fighting Painted Renoir. It kind of feels like he died for nothing, but perhaps his death gave Maelle the drive to carry on his torch. But I digress. For Maelle, his loss is a turning point. Because Gustave wasn't just her brother, he was the last familiar piece of her world. Losing him doesn't just hurt, it changes the direction of her life, and that is where her story begins. Maelle doesn't start with a strategy for grief. Like most of us in real life, she stumbles through it. Not that she hasn't experienced loss. Of course, her parents died when she was 3, and a lot of people that she knew in Lumiere would be gommage, but it's just not the same thing as being conscious and losing people that you actually had the time to invest in and care for. For all intents and purposes, she's still uninitiated to the existential crisis that is life and death. She's a kid, and to be real with you, that's what makes her arc so affecting, because we get to watch her grow. From the very beginning of the story, even before she regains her memories of the real world, of being a goddess, essentially, we can feel her shifting. She's scared, young, and figuring everything out in real time. But across her journey, we see how those emotions stretch and evolve, how pain starts to transform her. Her character development involves life happening to her. Naturally, as a child, she leans on Gustave. He's more than family. He's the sense of stability in a chaotic and bleak world. She mirrors Gustave's composure and humor, maybe thinking that's how strength works. But underneath the surface, especially when all she has left of him is his arm, her fear begins to grow teeth. On the way to bury Gustave, right before the fight with the dueliste, Maelle breaks.
Hey, you holding up? We're almost there.
Holding up. Everywhere we go, just death. Death and more death. Everywhere we go, just death. I don't want to see that anymore.
Look, Maelle,
I thought you would understand. You said you spent your immortality burying the people around you. Doesn't any of this bother you? And you, Gustave's dead. How can you keep going like nothing happened?
For the longest time, she dreamed of leaving Lumiere, of escaping the dome and seeing what was of the outside world, but not like this, not surrounded by death and trauma. The world for her was ruined in a way that she never could have imagined. Consequently, she would lash out at Verso, at Loon, at Sciel, furious that they seem to feel nothing. But here's the thing. They're older. Just like you and me, they have lived through loss before. Death and tragedy are no strangers to them, and they know what it takes to survive. And soon, Maelle would realize that grief doesn't stop the world from turning. It just makes it harder to keep walking. But life goes on. After the dueliste is defeated, they finally lay Gustave to rest, and that is when Maelle truly lets herself feel everything. She mourns him. And this is the start of a process to get back to emotional equilibrium. As humans, we just gotta grieve. We all do it differently, but it's necessary to go through it and come out on the other end. She promises him that she's going to carry the fight forward, that she'll become the Sword of Lumiere, and that is the moment that her grief transforms, evolves into something new. Direction. She stops being the girl who needed saving and coddling and starts becoming somebody that others can rely on. And so, analyzing this, we see that this is how she's processing grief, by growing through it, not instantly or cleanly. I mean, let's be real, it's never that way, but rather step by step. And that promise that she makes at the grave, it is her crossing the threshold in her identity. That is how Maelle matures and heals. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, when somebody, after facing deep loss or trauma, doesn't just recover, but evolves. They develop stronger values, a clearer purpose, and a more grounded sense of who they are. That is Maelle. Her pain becomes the soil for something steady and real to grow from. But, you see, part of that growth means accepting the situation and who she really is. Because Maelle isn't just Maelle. She's also Alicia, daughter of Aline, the paintress, and Renoir, the curator, sister to Clea and Verso, the Descendre family, the painters. In the real world, Alicia was burned inside and out, not just by a literal fire, but by shame and guilt from her family. So she made a mistake, allowing a rival faction, the Riders, to strike, and so they attacked the Descendre manor, setting it ablaze. And Verso, her brother, gave his life trying to save her. She did sustain severe damage to her body, loss of an eye, scorched and singed skin all over, and a damaged throat which incapacitates her ability to speak. From that moment on, her family, her world, didn't just treat her like the victim, they treated her as if she was the cause, as if she were the match that killed her brother, that destroyed their family. And so her mother blames her, which is why when she painted Maelle again in the real world, or painted Alicia, I should say, she didn't paint her as she should have been, but rather as she was in reality, with her destroyed image. She was trying to punish her. Alicia's sister Clea resented her. Her father, Renoir, saw her as a liability, something fragile and broken. And what sucks is that Alicia believed them. Like, she already felt terribly for what she thinks that she caused, but her parents, her sister, tacked on to that. As a result, she felt useless, powerless, like a ghost wandering through her own life. So, when Clea told her to enter the painted world to help retrieve Renoir, she listened, because she wanted to help. Even if ambivalent and meek about it, she wanted to prove that she wasn't just a waste of air. But the moment that she stepped into late Verso's painting, she was overwhelmed by the raw, swirling chroma of her mother, Aline. Consequently, her mind collapsed under the weight of it, and in that collapse, Alicia disappeared. What came out was Maelle, reborn into the paintress's world. For 16 years, Alicia lived in the painted world with no memory of herself, her real self. She believed that she was Maelle. And for her, it felt real. It was real. Her voice came back. Her body didn't hurt anymore. Her skin wasn't scarred. The guilt wasn't there to rot her from the inside out. Gustave was her family, life was perfect, but it was relatively peaceful. It was safe from guilt, being ignorant to the ink that stained her in the real world. So when her memories finally did return, when the truth floods all the way back in, the world she once escaped to becomes something else entirely. It becomes a blissful drug, her own brand of drug. Because now she knows. She knows the life she built is a lie. But it's the only place she still feels whole. The only place where she isn't reminded by her face or family every second of what she lost and what she caused. And even with all that truth in her hands, she still chooses to stay. Because the real world made her feel like a monster, while the painted one let her feel like a person. But Alicia doesn't just escape into the painted world, she ends up reshaping it, becoming the new paintress. This goddess created her perfect world with everybody she wanted in it. Most unknowing, some knowing, and some trapped. The canvas she clings to isn't just any painting, it is the last place where a fragment of her brother's soul still lingers. Verso and Clea created this world as children, filling it with their innocence, their wonder, their love. Alicia knows that. And so she holds on to this dream even when it hurts others. And to keep her happiness intact, she does something insanely mental and brutal. She keeps painted Verso with her, against his will. I mean, he's like crying and begging her to be freed, to be released from a life he no longer wants because he knows that he's not real. But she says no.
Hey, please, listen to me. Only you can do this. You can do this, please. Unpaint me. Unpaint me.
So,
Please. I don't want this life.
stop saying
I
that.
don't want this life. I don't want this life.
I just wanted to live this lifetime together. This lifetime that was stolen from us. Please. Bro. Please.
I don't want this life. Help me. Help me.
Because in this nostalgic illusion of hers, her brother is still alive. Even if he's held like a captive in the lie like a puppet, she denies him his wish. While her intent isn't sinister, it is a reflection of the issues in the way that Alicia handles grief. She tries to escape it, but she pulls others down with her. Staying in the painted world isn't just detrimental to herself mentally and physically, it's devastating to others, and Verso is the prime example of that. I mean, look at him in the end. All he wanted to do with his life was play music. It was his passion, and he finally gets his dream of performing in concert, but it's twisted. And you can see the life and passion completely drained and exhausted from him. And all because Alicia didn't want to let go of her past, just like her mom. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as maladaptive nostalgia, a form of coping where the past becomes so idealized that returning to it, even as an illusion, feels safer, better than facing the present. For Alicia, it's escapism, the only place where she has her perfect life. And in the end, that need that she has outweighs everything and everybody else, even Verso's freedom. The thing about Verso is that he knows he isn't real, which blooms into a whole new set of mental destabilization. Now, you see, at first, Verso's grief is a little hard to spot, but maybe that's what makes it worse. His pain isn't loud, it's not reactionary, it is quiet, slow, and pretty damn impossible to fix. We don't see Verso grieve the way that others do because he doesn't have the freedom or space to. After all, he's not alive. He is a painted echo, trapped in a world he didn't make, replaying a life he never asked to continue, one that he didn't want. And once he realizes that, once he becomes fully self-aware, the absolute gravity of that truth slowly presses down on him, crushing him. He's immortal in a very bad way. He can't die, but he also can't truly live either. He walks through a dream made from somebody else's pain, someone else's longing, and he knows it. He wanted to end his fake life, but he was denied death. Maelle, Alicia, keeps him prisoner. Not because she's cruel, but because she just can't let him go. She needs the entire thing to be perfect with everybody in it. And let me tell you, that is the horror, absolute horror, of being loved by somebody who was broken. Because you become their anchor, their drug, their reason for staying numb. And that is a fuck ton of responsibility to place on somebody else, especially when somebody is straight up tired of existing. It is no wonder why he changed tunes. This is how he approaches grief. From protecting the paintress at first to eventually trying to end her because Verso is caught in a loop. And that loop aligns perfectly with something Freud once called death drive. This unconscious compulsion humans have to return to a state of calm, to nothingness, even if it destroys them. And his father, painted Renoir, would even use this exact phrase. At the manor in Old Lumiere, before their first fight with Renoir, he says Verso has a drive towards death. But also we kind of get it. He's a tragic character. Verso wants to rest, he wants an end. Everybody's grieving, but I don't know, I would argue that even the soul of the real Verso, the fated boy, was tired of being. In the end of the story, as Verso is with him, he nods at being tired of painting. He wants to rest, but he's denied that release by the one person he died for. So now every second of his existence is filled with that contradiction, to love Alicia, but not be free because of her love. Again, just being someone else's crutch, that's horrifying. That's painful. It doesn't allow you to be who you want to be. It doesn't let you grow into what you possibly could have been. It's extremely damaging. And this is also what makes his grief so existential. He's not just mourning a person, he's mourning his own agency, his own death, his own meaning. The closer he gets to understanding the truth of his existence, the more unbearable it becomes. He is trapped in what existential psychologists like Irvin Yalom describe as ontological guilt, a deep, almost spiritual kind of suffering that arises from being aware of what you could be, but can never become. And Verso does share this aspect, this ontological grief with Alicia. He's not blind to it, and a part of me thinks that Verso, seeing his mother and now his sister go through the same motions, wants to also end the canvas so that Alicia can heal, like actually start healing. In my opinion, Verso's ending, even though Esquie does die, is the best ending. It's maybe not the best ending, but the one that needs to happen. Sometimes in life we have to do the hard things because they need to happen. Verso is such an incredibly well-written character, and he's got so much more to him than many will probably realize at first, but I can't help but think how cruel it is to be remembered but not be released. He is the quintessential symbol of what happens when somebody else's healing requires your sacrifice. In a way, he becomes the most human character of them all, because even though he knows he's not real, what he feels is on par with any real human. But I know that some of you will not be able to relate to any of the characters we've talked about so far. When it comes to grief, some of you are going to be more formulaic. Like, it's something to solve, to fix, to categorize, and store neatly in a mental cabinet. Clea doesn't talk about it to a great extent. She doesn't dwell on it, she acts. I believe she's vehemently livid, willing to fight the war against the writers by herself, DLC when, and in her mind that is enough. This is how she deals with grief. Compared to Alicia and Verso, Clea's coping style feels cold, almost surgical. She's not as openly wounded, not as visibly unwell, Some people in real life just get angry, and that's valid. I knew a lot of guys in the military who, when somebody they knew died, they would just hit the gym and pick up something heavy. They directed their rage towards productivity. But when you look closely at any of them, I can comprehend the lower levels of somebody like Clea's grief. Comparable to Loon, it's just been intellectualized, turned into something that has been rationalized. I hope that makes sense. For someone like Clea, it's their way of surviving, where they compartmentalize loss and focus on control, on logic, on fixing what can still be fixed, making things right. It is clear in how she sends Alicia into the painted world. Not because she hates her sister, not exactly. I don't even know if hate is the most apt description. Actually, I think it's important to hit on the relationship a bit. So when it comes to Clea, she deals with grief not just with directed focus, but also with a tendency to lash out at those around her. She has an incredibly imperious demeanor, even looking down on her parents at certain points. And with her little sister, she definitely takes it out on her, even if it's a little bit understandable. I'm sure we've met people like this before who take it out on others due to frustration, but she's clinical about grief because emotional investment makes the pain worse, and so she's not letting herself feel that again. Although we do still see glimpses of the sorrow she feels for losing her brother, as she states how much she hates Verso for dying, which again solidifies how she handles trauma. Yet continuing her talk with Alicia, she refocuses towards pragmatism. You ever meet anybody like that? Bad things happen and they just immediately gear themselves towards doing something so they don't have to sit with the pain? That emotional detachment, that is another form of escapism, harkening back to the idea that everyone is just trying to escape pain. Cognitive avoidance is a defense mechanism where people protect themselves from overwhelming feelings by focusing on logic, distraction, or task-based thinking instead of emotion. These types of people bury themselves in work to distract themselves. But Clea isn't entirely heartless. She's just disciplined. Too disciplined, maybe. Because grief can't actually be outsmarted. We are human. And while her coldness protects her from the collapse we see in Alicia or Aline, it walls her off from connection. And the other thing about this is that it makes it hard for others to approach her too, her sister, for an example. And as a result, it creates a fissure in the family, where everybody is just on their own islands grieving alone instead of together as a family. Clea doesn't seem to have any real warmth left for anyone anymore. And maybe this is because of necessity or out of fear that she could possibly get hurt again. Yet later, when Alicia is talking with Verso at the camp, we discover that Clea did enter the painting after realizing she was overtaken by their mother's chroma. At first, I thought she was just nonchalant and didn't care about her sister because she was like, oh well, you're gonna be born again, and that's it. But with this, she reveals that she does still care and love her little sister, even if scornful, because she took the time to go into the painting to tell Painted Verso to watch over Maelle for the next 16 years. Plus, Clea mentions that it is safer for her to stay in the painting than to get further involved in the war outside in the real world.
See? That wasn't so hard. Wait, that's Aline's chroma. Stay calm. Don't let it take control of you. Calm, Alicia, or it'll paint over you. What an auspicious start. Well, you're about to be reborn in this world as one of Aline's creations. Have fun. At least this will keep you out of trouble until I get back.
And so with this understanding of Clea, we can look at Lune and discover how she handles grief. She burns it for fuel. She's a lot like Clea in the sense that she deals with life's pains by turning it into momentum. In my opinion, out of everybody in Expedition 33, she might seem to be the most put together. Calm, strategic, always one step ahead, always planning. However, in her own words, that is exactly how she copes. She doesn't sit with her grief, she outruns it. She organizes, trains, and keeps moving. When Maelle apologizes for lashing out at her after Gustave's death on the bridge, Lune doesn't get cold or defensive. She relates. She says that she used to be the same way, angry, confused, lost in the storm of emotions. She said she tried every other form of grieving before until she found out what works best for her. She tried denial, escape, even wallowing, but none of it worked. What did work? Movement. Turning all of that sorrow into action. Grief doesn't stop her. Even in the alternate ending, when Verso gets his wish to end the canvas, Lune goes out defiantly. With a death stare, and like I said in my story explained video, if looks could kill, man, she would be a nuclear bomb. Dear God, the way she looks at him is just wow. Like when I saw her give him that look, I was just like, oh shit. But this is what we call action-oriented coping. Problem-solving, goal-seeking, forward planning. Studies show people who cope this way often suffer less short-term distress. However, there is a trade-off. Sometimes that focus on motion delays actual emotional processing, imperative for full psychological recovery, and Lune is a perfect case of that. I would add that this is just part of the way that she was raised from a young age by her parents. They taught her to just work, work, work. It's like in the military, at least when I was in, you don't have the luxury of time to feel, you just have the mission. Something Aline would probably have normally agreed with, but that was before she lost her son and her family broke. Because when it comes to her grief, she just tries to paint over it. Before she became the paintress, Aline was the head of the Painters' Council, an authority unmatched in power, leadership, and technique. She even taught her husband, Renoir, how to use his chroma, how to use their powers as painters. But none of that mattered when Verso died. That grief hollowed her out, and instead of facing it, she created a new world. Well, she went into the world that was already created and then, did her own stuff, but she was in the canvas, where the final sliver of her son's essence still lived. A world where her son was still alive. She simply pined to feel close to him again. This choice began her descent. Renoir tried to pull her back, knowing the venom that their powers could become. The longer they're in a painting, the more their very beings start to disintegrate. It makes them devastatingly ill. And so out of love, he entered the painting himself, not wanting her to use the canvas as copium for her pain. Even Clea had to step in to assist him to try to balance out the scales, but Aline was head of the painters for a reason. This mother would not leave the only place where her son still existed. She was mourning, and that mourning became her world. Psychologists might refer to this as complicated grief, a condition where the natural grieving process stalls and the person becomes stuck, often engaging in behaviors that freeze time, preserve memory, or avoid finality, which is exactly what Aline did. And from this we can even relate it back to Alicia to understand why she fought so hard against her father, begging for him to not destroy Verso's painting. Like mother, like daughter. The paintress preserved the version of her life where Verso never died, even when it meant sealing herself and others inside of that illusion as well. But as with any drug, it never enables proper healing and only gives a false sense of control. And Renoir's method of grief is control. Whether it's the painted version or the real one, Renoir is focused on one thing, keeping what's left of his family from falling into further decay, even if he has to impose his will upon others. His grief shows in the way that he manages everything around him. He organizes, directs, makes executive decisions for others. For him, after everything he's lost, control is the only thing that makes sense, and he tries to maintain any sense of control that he can. Painted Renoir wants to protect the world Aline created to keep his family together. Real Renoir wants to pull her out of it because he wants to keep his family together. Well, what's left of it at least. Both versions act differently, but the goal is the same. Clea even says it outright in the Endless Tower. Her father copes with control. It's not a power trip, it's fear. Fear that if he lets go of even one thread, the whole tapestry might come undone, and once again, he would have to watch another of his family members die. Alfred Adler theorized that people often respond to feelings of inferiority or loss of control by overcorrecting in the opposite direction. Instead of showing vulnerability, they act with rigid authority, structure, or strength to maintain a sense of competence and safety, especially when emotionally overwhelmed. Because even though he's the father, and he is supposed to be the rock that holds everything up, he still feels the pain of his son's death. And his lack of control over that situation makes him want to exert control. His family fractured, his wife lost to the painted world, his son dead, his daughters, one of whom is essentially now handicapped, are divided. But as with many who overcompensate, again, this doesn't actually solve the problem. On the other hand, you have people like Monoco, who tries hiding from grief, and then he tries to fix it. Monoco has seen more deaths than anyone in Expedition 33, I think. He's watched expeditioners come and go, most of them never returning. He even knows that he shouldn't get attached to humans, and that is why he promised himself and Verso that he would never put himself in that position again, never to join another expedition. Instead, he stayed with the Grandis. He told himself that it was to protect them. But the truth, he was protecting himself. From more loss, from more pain, from the fear of watching someone else die and not being able to stop it. Staying away from the front line gave him the illusion of safety. Because how can you feel pain if you never get attached in the first place? A lot of people do this. They choose to stay away from love or relationships out of the potential of being possibly hurt again. But grief has a way of catching up. When Noko dies, he tried to bring him back almost immediately, despite Golgra's ruling. It's a moment of raw desperation. This is Monoco's coping style. Fix it. Bring him back. Change the outcome. In the end, he's just trying to outmaneuver grief like everybody else, thinking that if he resurrects Noko, he can avoid the pain of more loss. But deep down, he knows that some things can't be fixed. And there are some who know this and try to approach life's sadness with a smile. Sciel is one of the most warm, patient, and disarming people you're ever going to meet on the journey. But that warmth wasn't born from peace. It came from being at your lowest and learning that it's better to have loved and lost than to not have loved at all. That you can be Whoo, but you can also be we. You just gotta remember to choose we every now and again. Years before the events of Expedition 33, she lost her husband, and as a result, she tried to leave the world with him. She swam out into the open sea until her arms gave out, ready to let the ocean swallow her. But what she didn't know was that she was pregnant. That decision, that moment she gave up, she lost the baby too. And Sciel doesn't talk about this much. She doesn't make a spectacle out of it. She focuses on the little things, just trying to enjoy life with her friends, the day-to-day rhythm of keeping the team steady. Her cheerfulness isn't fake, but it is a buffer. Her way of making sure no one has to feel what she once did, or at least she tries to. You will find Sciel to be one of the most emotionally capable characters in Clair Obscur. Whenever someone's down in the dumps, whether it's Gustave or Maelle, she's one of the first people to try to come and comfort them. She doesn't hide from pain. She doesn't try to mask it. She just wears it and accepts it as part of her persona. Hence, when they fought the Axon, the Masked Keeper, she was able to just take the mask off, where the rest of the team struggled. She has, in my opinion, one of the best approaches to life's greatest challenges, emotional regulation. This has to do with how we manage our feelings so they don't control us or mess up what we're trying to do. It isn't about ignoring emotions or pretending like they don't exist. It's about choosing how to deal with them in a way that works for us and the situation that we're in. Studies show that people who learn good emotional regulation skills are less likely to struggle with anxiety and depression, and they tend to be better socially and academically. Now, this is how I should approach grief whenever I do come across it, but a nice bottle of Glenfiddich does the job nicely as well. Just kidding. Scotch for trauma isn't good, but it helps. Kidding. Don't be like Sciel and drink like 15 bottles of wine either. But one thing I didn't address, and you might be wondering this, is how she survived drowning in the ocean. Well, that brings us to my favorite character, the master of Wee and Woo himself, Esquie. He is unlike anyone else in the story. A stitched together plush of rocks, fluff, and wine, with a voice that sounds like morning sunshine, and a heart big enough to hug the whole world. But he's not just here for comic relief. He is the soul of the game, the warmth in the cold, the weird, wonderful glue that holds this broken little family together. When Maelle breaks down about Gustave's death, Esquie is right there to offer his belly for her to cry into. When Verso is weighed down by guilt, Esquie lightens it without dismissing it. When Sciel tried to die, it was Esquie who heard her tears and saved her from drowning in the ocean, bringing her back to the port of Lumiere. No recognition, no thanks needed. He just did it, because that's who he is, the king of kindness. He makes the game feel like home. That's just what he does, and that's what makes his approach to grief so unique. He is the antithesis to it, the emotional inverse. Esquie doesn't fight pain, he hugs the living fucking shit out of it. And he is a great emotional support for anyone. Unlike most men, he doesn't immediately try to just fix it. He's present, only present. He shows up, he listens, he lets people feel without judgment, and when words fail, he just stays. He runs not from the darkness in others, he dances in it, relishes in stories and adventures, and dishes out playful wisdom that can be as surface level or deep as you want it to be. My wife actually heard Esquie talking, and she was like, "Who is this guru?" I thought that was funny. But maybe, more than anyone else, Esquie understands that grief isn't something that you can just fix. It's something that you carry. So he helps others carry it. He's like the Jesus Christ of this world, consumer of worries. He lightens the weight moment by moment, laugh by laugh. I mean, the dude just spreads love, not anger. I guess him being filled with wine helps. Again, last one. The rotund Esquie is the most wholesome one in the entire game. He knows what is broken in everyone around him, and instead of trying to fix it, he just loves them through it. Honestly, I think we all need somebody like that. Bonus if you made it this far, Francois deals with grief by being grumpy and never moving from his spot as he waits for Clea to come back. But the sad thing is, I don't think Clea is ever going to come back because she seems to be done with this world like a toy that she just leaves collecting dust. On the screen, you will have two choices. Take the blue pill and watch the entire story explained video for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, or take the red pill and watch my psychological breakdown of every character in a more disturbing but brilliant video. Mouthwashing.